You're listening to Soul Food. We are thrilled to announce the launch of the SoulFood FM shop. Now you can grab Soul Food hoodies, mugs, decals, and more. Every purchase helps us make more Soul Food episodes and bring Soul Food to a wider audience. Visit us today at soulfoodfm.shop.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. They say just as our bodies need nourishment to survive, our souls need to be nourished as well. But the question is, how often do we feed our souls? Welcome to Soul Food, a podcast about spiritual refinement. My name is Amjad Tarsin, and I invite you to embark with me on this journey inward to work on our souls. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Soul Food, episode 13, where we're going to look at anger and how you have to control your anger and be very careful of it in the month of Ramadan and when you're fasting. So in this episode, we're going to look at how fasting can affect anger. We're going to look at the importance of controlling your tongue when angry. And then we're going to talk about constraining the nafs and how critical this is to the spiritual path and to spiritual development. So one of the things that happens when you fast is that your body adjusts. It's a big adjustment. And your routine is really disrupted. And I remember at the beginning of Ramadan especially, the first few days were really tough without coffee. And that was kind of my thing in the morning before Ramadan. And then that was disrupted, and I even felt physically a change within that. And as blood sugar is affected within the human being just biologically, we become more irritable. It's very easy to the things that might not really annoy you start to get more annoying. And we mentioned in previous episodes how fasting is good precisely because it does that. It disrupts your habits. And when you disrupt your habits, you're able to take on a new perspective. And when this thing happened with the coffee at the beginning of Ramadan, I didn't even realize how dependent I was on coffee until I started feeling these, really severe headaches at the beginning of the month. And it made me say to myself, okay, this isn't really good. You shouldn't be this dependent on coffee. So it helped me see something that I didn't know was there before, or it helped me realize something that I wasn't aware of before. And for many of us in Ramadan, this anger or this irritability that we go through, especially when we're adjusting to fasting, it is a test. Because as we're being shaken out of our normal routines, the nafs doesn't like that. The nafs likes comfort. The nafs wants to be really set on what it always gets. But when you disrupt that, it becomes agitated and irritated. So we have to be extra careful in the month of Ramadan when we're fasting, when we get angry with one another, not to let that anger take over. Especially at the end of the day. It's the end of the day, people get more tired, you come back from work, you're hungry, you're tired, you're thirsty. That can be a time where you're triggered easily, so you have to be very careful. And what the fast is meant to do is that it's meant to refine your inner character. It's meant to illuminate your inner character. And it's meant to beautify your inner character, so don't invalidate that. Don't ruin that journey and that goal by getting angry in the month of Ramadan. So that brings us to the next point of controlling your tongue when angry. We looked at this hadith before when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, says, fasting is a shield. And it's beautiful if you think about it that way, that fasting is a shield. It protects you, and it is meant to actually make you more aware and more cautious. So on the days that any of you is fasting, let him not say anything vile or yell. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, is saying, don't get into an argument. Don't say anything lewd. Don't say anything that you wouldn't normally say or that you shouldn't say. And if anyone insults or fights you, let them say, I am fasting. I am fasting. So this helps us control ourselves and know that the first expression of anger usually manifests on the tongue. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, do not say anything vile or yell, even if someone is insulting you or fighting you. Do not say anything vile or yell. Don't get angry. Don't respond to anger with anger. Don't respond to ugliness with ugliness, but control your nafs. And remind yourself, I'm fasting. I'm fasting. Hold on. Someone says something to you, you say, oh, I got something I want to say right back to you. You're getting on my nerves. You're pushing my buttons. Then you say to yourself, hold on. I'm fasting. I'm fasting. I have to control myself. I have to be mindful of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me. I need to control my nafs. I need to beautify my nafs. This is not how I should respond. And Imam al-Ghazali says, when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, teaches us to say, I am fasting, he says, it is as if you are saying to yourself, my tongue is a trust that is given to me by God, so how can I misuse that trust to insult you? That this is something that God has given me, and I am taking care of it, and it is a blessing. So how would I spoil that blessing and that trust? By insulting you. So, you have to control yourself when you do get angry. And one of the things that fasting does is that it helps us become more present within ourselves. Is that even having that feeling of hunger in your stomach, if you're feeling it, it helps you become more in tune with your body and your own feelings, which is actually a very important thing. You're more mindful of your own self. So when you do have feelings of anger or frustration, we should be able to confront them, and we should be able to take care of them and control them before we let them control us. So when you're fasting, even if you do get angry, and the thing is, getting angry or feeling angry is not in and of itself a bad thing. But what we're talking about is letting that anger take control, letting that anger rule you and guide you. So if you're driving and someone cuts you off on the road, or if you're tired after work, or if something just doesn't go your way in your day-to-day life, just remember that you're fasting and you have to hold yourself to a higher standard, that you are in a different state than you are on another day, on a regular day outside of Ramadan. So that brings us to the final point, which is really that one of the great things about Ramadan and one of the great things about fasting is that it is a way to spiritually control your nafs. And the spiritual path, we've been talking about this if you've listened to season 1 of Soul Food, that the spiritual path is essentially the attempt to purify and beautify the soul from the pollution of the nafs, and from the pollution of the devil, and from the pollution of anything that is lowly or anything that does not bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the spiritual path, which is why fasting is so unique. And they say that the nafs, the scholars of the spiritual path of Islam, and it's a narration of the Prophet, that the nafs is worse, that the nafs is your worst enemy. And that one of the scholars said that the nafs is worse than 70 devils, which is why the inner jihad, the inner struggle, is the greater struggle to cleanse yourself of the lowly things of the nafs. And fasting helps us do that. And one of the unique things about fasting, unlike the other forms of worship, if you look at prayer, or you look at giving zakat or charity, or you look at the pilgrimage, all of these things, that they are things that you do, that you actually do something. Whereas fasting is unique in that it is something that you hold back from. That fasting isn't really doing something, but it's more not doing something. That you are not engaging in your regular routine of eating and drinking and so forth. So what fasting really does in a unique way is it teaches us discipline and self-control. Right? So we should be extremely careful about anger and allowing anger to control us, especially when we're fasting, because the whole purpose of fasting is to control your nafs and to discipline your nafs. And it would be a shame to nullify that pursuit and that noble goal by giving into anger. And there's a hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in which he says that verily the devil runs in the son of Adam, in the human being, like the flowing of the bloodstream, right? Majra dam, that as your blood flows through your body, that the devil runs in the son of Adam just like that. So he said, peace and blessings be upon him, therefore constrain or constrict the passageways of the devil with hunger. That when you control your stomach, when you fast, when you don't give in to those desires, that you actually limit the potential of the devil to control you. So that fasting and hunger are a very lofty and very powerful spiritual way to purify yourself and to teach yourself discipline and self-control so that you can beautify yourself with noble character and with the character of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So that brings us to the call to action. The call to action is that you should be so courteous and you should be so kind and generous and compassionate to people today that you don't even let anger into the picture. That make yourself especially graceful and beautiful in your dealings with people, that you don't even let anger into the picture. And you will see that this works. When you tell yourself, I am going to be kind and generous and patient with people, that you are less likely to even get irritated and annoyed. And if someone does try to rile you up, just smile and walk away. But the call to action is just be extra nice and see the effects in yourself and the effects on other people by doing so. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you for listening to Soul Food. To subscribe to the show, visit soulfood.fm, where you can subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, or by email. If you're on iTunes, please also leave us a rating and a review. It helps more people discover the show.